When it comes to our drawing practice, we're all at different stages, so in this video we'll approach a peony illustration from 3 different levels, and you can join me for one or all of them. Hello friends, welcome! My name is Shayda Campbell, and on this channel we get creative together. I do a lot of beginner tutorials aimed at encouraging the artist in all of us. You don't need to be good at art to start drawing and painting and just have some fun with it. So in today's video, we are going to do some illustration together, and we are going to draw peonies. These fluffy, frilly flowers that have layers and layers of petals and that can be a little bit intimidating. And so I thought it would be fun to approach the peony illustration in sort of 3 stages. I'm going to show you my kind of beginner basic doodle level approach to a peony, then we'll take it a little further, and then a little further to make this sort of advanced level drawing. And you can, follow along with each stage, or you can just stop at the step that you're comfortable with. I think what I really want to show is that you can simplify, simplify, simplify. You can always make a flower or anything a lot simpler than it actually is. And that's a comforting thing, I think, as an artist. You're not doing hyper realism. You can just doodle whatever you want, your cat or a peony or whatever. And so that's where we'll start, and then we'll kind of move beyond the doodle and we'll make this flower a little more realistic, a little more artful, and then we'll get into not like a realistic sketch, but just something that has a little more shading, a little more depth, so you can see kind of the 3 phases or stages of my peony. Let's just get into it. Hope that makes sense. Just a note, we have over 400 art tutorials on the channel now, so if you're ever looking for more content or there's a flower that you want me to draw or paint, make sure you search like Shayda Campbell, tulip, or carnation, or whatever it is, because it might be out there already. We have so many beginner level tutorials that we're really proud of around here. So yeah, okay, let's grab some pens and pencils and get started. With our level 1 illustration, it's all about simplifying the flower and capturing some of its key elements, such as the tightly clustered inner petals and large fluffy outer petals. So I'm beginning with a circle, and then I'm kind of dividing it into 4 little sections there. And then I kind of go around again, and those are my center petals. For the stamen in the middle, I'm going to do a cluster of little dots. So really simple. And then I'll start to incorporate some larger petals. It's a good idea to do this in pencil first. You can see I'm kind of reshaping mine to make sure that they overlap enough. And then we're going to go around the circle again, and this time we'll do the petals even larger. I'm going to add a curving stem, and the peony is known for those big, beautiful buds, so I'll put one of those. And then here's my trick for drawing leaves. Just do like an oval shape, and then once you have the oval sitting where you like and the size that you like, go around and add a little detail like some scalloped edges or toothy edges. Okay, let's grab a pen. I am using the Molotow black liners. This is the 04 nib, so it's got a good weight to it. Still a very precise pen though. And I am going around those tightly clustered center petals. And then as I go over the larger petals, you can see me begin to wiggle that pen a little bit. And in that way, we are capturing some of the key elements of the peony, these fluffy petals that are a little bit ruffled, and they have a very broken sort of edge to them. So even though our illustration is simple, we are capturing those key details that let the viewer know this is in fact a peony. I'm going over the stem, and you can see me thickening it just ever so slightly. You don't have to do that. If you feel like you don't have a steady hand, just leave it at one line. Going around my leaves, and we'll make this bud not too smooth. We don't want it to be too round, and we could put a few lines on the leaves as well. I'll get rid of all my pencil markings, and if you want to, you could grab a smaller nib fine liner. I'm using the 02, and we could put like a few little shading lines on some of the petals, maybe darken the stem, totally optional, but for our first peony illustration, that's all we need to do. It's done and it looks really cute. Our level 2 peony is going to be drawn on an angle, so it'll look a little more three-dimensional. I'm starting with the stamen. It's still a cluster of messy dots. They're sort of in an oval shape. Then I'm drawing an oval around the dots, and from there we sketch it into this bowl. So think of trying to draw a bowl shape. You can see I sketched it a lot. I had a lot of pencil lines. I kind of erased and drew it in again and erased a bit more. You want this shallow bowl, and that is our guide. Then we divide the front of the bowl into 3 petals. They don't have to be the perfect shape right now. And the back of the bowl gets another 3 petals kind of peeking out. So those are our tightly clustered center petals. Now we start adding the rest of the petals, which are sort of peeling away from center and getting a bit larger. However, the ones at the back of the stamen towards the top of the page, they're a little smaller, whereas the ones at the bottom towards the bottom of our page, they're a little larger. The first 2 I drew are still quite shallow because they're kind of curling up towards the center of the flower, but from there we do get larger with those bottom petals. And keeping the ones at the back small because they are just peeking out. We can only just see the tops of them because of the angle of our flower. And then we are going to kind of add an extra line to the bottom or side of some of these petals, and that makes it look like the petal is curling up or curling a little bit. So we're not just looking at a bunch of flat petals. Some of them have a bit of curvature to them. So that will help with that three-dimensional look as well. You can see me adding more petals where I need one, tucking one in the back, and refining the shape of some of the ones I've already drawn. And that's why we work in pencil. I'm going to do that same curving stem, a leaf or 2, and the bud on this one is going to be a little more intricate, a little more open. So I draw a circle, and then right away, I put 2 petals that are kind of falling away from the circle. So they've just got a bit of space between bud and petal. And then the rest of the bud, you just divide into about 3 petals, maybe with a little scribble right at the top. Let's go over this in pen so you can see again all of the points that I'm talking about. We've got these little hints of petals just poking up behind that center stamen. Then we have 3 petals making that bowl shape up at the front. In front of that, we have 2 very shallow petals that curl up towards the center of the flower. And then from there, a lot of the other petals are larger, they're fluffier, they're falling away from center. However, the ones at the back, you're only seeing just the top of the petal, so they do appear smaller on the page. We are also thickening, doing a double line kind of for the bottom or side of some of the petals, and that's what you see me doing here. And for the petals and their thickened edge, I am really shaking that pen now. The peony has those very roughly, almost broken edged petals, and I want to capture that. So I'm wiggling the pen, making little indents where I need it, and that really helps just with the look of the peony flower. If you're wondering why I'm kind of jumping around and doing one petal here and one petal there, it's because I'm always stopping to look at the overall flower. Does it still look balanced? I want to place some smooth petals near some petals that are more indented or roughly, I don't want them all to be super broken. So I'm just constantly like kind of checking in with the illustration and looking at it, and then, okay, I'll do one more petal. Stem and leaves are basically the same as the first, just thickening that stem ever so slightly. And then of course that bud, you start with a circle, but the 2 petals are falling away from it. And then I've divided the circle into those 3 petals and kind of just doing a little scribble at the top to indicate the tightly clustered petals at the center of the bud. Now I did decide to put even another layer of petals kind of right inside that first layer near the stamen. So you can see me doing kind of the tops of some more petals along with going over the little circles for my messy stamen. put in one last petal there, one or two more, and I think that is done. Let's get rid of all of our pencil lines so we can really see what we're working with, get it all nice and cleaned up. And then all I really want to do here is darken those little scribbly circles at the center of the flower. I think I just want to leave this as a beautiful contour drawing, and that's that. Let's talk level 3. She looks a little complicated, I'll say that, but it is a lot of fun to draw this way. It's a contour drawing, just like level 2, slightly more intricate, yes, and then we add a lot of line shading. We're going to do this one on an angle as well. We begin with a guide for center, so start by sketching a circle. Simple as that. We're going to angle this flower kind of the other way. So circle to start, and then we're going to place one petal right at the front, kind of like the bud in level 2. I've sketched an additional 2 petals, one on each side, and then we're tucking some more petals kind of in behind, so layers and layers, the ones at the back being very, very small. And then for the center, there's 2 ways to do it. You can scribble a messy spiral or scribble a messy flower. Both give the look of this really tight cluster of petals at the center of the flower. Then we want to just reshape these petals ever so slightly. We don't want the center of the flower to look like a perfect circle, so I'm just kind of wiggling my pencil a little. And then we are going to do those front petals, so the petals that curve up towards center. So there are 2 messy ones, and they're going to curve around the circle. And then, of course, we tuck some shallow petals in behind. They're not shallow, but we're just seeing the tops. You get it. And then we begin to do larger petals that are falling away from center. They're always going to be a little larger towards the bottom of the page, and at the top of the flower, top of the paper, we are just seeing the tops of the petals so they appear a little smaller. So a lot of stuff in the level 3 drawing is very much the same as level 2. So if you're feeling like, oh, level 2, I can do that, then, continue here with me, stick with it. You might notice that I'm wiggling the pencil even more. I really want these petals to look broken and ruffly, and there are probably more petals, but other than that, it's very similar to level 2. Okay, what I want to do now is when you're drawing a peony like this, center will tend to get off center basically, and you'll get to a point where you're thinking that flower doesn't look quite right, and you probably either need to raise or lower the flower's center, and that's what you saw me just do there. It's as simple as that. Step back from your piece, have a look and say, does the perspective look right? I lowered my center scribble ever so slightly. It's a very simple change to make. And then I'm sketching in the leaf and the bud, still very much the same as even level 1, but I just kind of placed them in a different spot. And then for our level 3, we're going to have those 2 petals kind of very loose, falling away just like in level 2, then divide the bud into 3, and then do that scribble for center. And maybe I'll even add another petal there because we are adding lots of extra petals on this one, and you saw me throw in one last leaf. Okay, and then just like the other 2, we're going to start going over everything in pen. And I'll say it again, I really want to capture those ruffled edges. I'm trying to think of another way to say it. They're broken, they're craggy, like the peony just doesn't have these smooth petals. They're very ruffly along the edges. So I'm doing a lot of that for this level 3 illustration. One part of this advanced illustration that really shines and really makes it jump off the page is all the detail at the center of the flower here. So instead of a bunch of little dots, we have layers and layers of petals, and we're hinting at them by seeing the tiny tops kind of peeking up, and then that messy scribble at the center, whether you're doing kind of a scribbly spiral or a scribbly flower, whatever works for your drawing. And same as level 2, remember to add that little extra bit of line along the side or bottom of some of the petals to make them look like they have a bit of curve to them. So that's just a nice element that really adds to the shape and flow and organic look of this big, beautiful flower. Actually, when I set out to do this video, I didn't feel super confident drawing peonies, and drawing it at the 3 levels petals, it actually helped me to draw level 1 and level 2 in order to get to level 3. You spend so much time thinking about what makes a peony, what are its key features, what can I capture, and then as you move through the levels of illustration, what can I advance? What can I really amp up as I move into the next level? And for me, it was definitely, making these petals and making the center of the flower super realistic and super ruffly. Haven't thought of another word yet. Anyway, I'm continuing with my contour drawing. Our bud is very organic. It's got all these petals kind of falling away, but it still has that tight cluster on center. I've done a number of leaves, and that just helps also with the perspective and the three-dimensional look of this more intricate drawing. There's leaves poking out every which way, and there's leaves in behind the flower. And then before we begin any shading, we want to get rid of all of our pencil marks. So just clean it up. You've got a nice clean contour drawing. Now we can grab that smaller nib fine liner, whether you're using the 01 or the 02, whatever you're comfortable with. Now we begin our line shading. Adding shading to your pen illustration is a great way to add depth and dimension and also hint at the texture and shape of the flower or of each petal and leaf. So what I'm thinking about first of all is, where is this flower going to be darker? Well, let's say the light is shining from above. You're the artist. You choose where your light source is. So I know that each petal is going to be a little darker towards the center of the flower where the light can't quite hit. So you can see me darkening the bottoms of petals, darkening anywhere there's a bit of curvature. I'm also thinking about the shape of every petal. Which way is the petal curving? Which way is it growing? If it's growing up towards the center of the flower, the lines are going up towards the center of the flower. If the petal is curving out and down towards the bottom of the page, you guessed it, my lines are going in that same direction. Here you can see me starting to put line shading on the leaf. I did not mean to do that, but it's fine. We'll come back to it. I'm just thinking about the petals right now. And for those petals that are curving out and down, I'm adding lines that are curving out and down. I'm adding lines at the bottoms of the petals to show that the light is not hitting there. But you'll also notice me adding lines at the tops of the petals, and that's to hint at the texture and that ruffly nature of the peony petal. So we're thinking about light, that's going to help with depth and dimension, and we're thinking about shape. Which way is the petal leaning or curving? And can I add to the texture of it by placing just a few little broken lines along the top? That's going to make it look a lot more realistic, a lot more ruffled. You can add synonyms for ruffled in the comments, okay? But the flower really begins to come together, and having a smaller nib fine liner, it helps you to make these really delicate, precise lines, and you just keep going around and around. You'll notice me going over my areas of line shading in order to darken it even more. Doing the same thing with the bud here. The petals going up have lots of lines going up, petals falling away have these lines that flow away from the bud. And then as the petals start to look good, I'm happy with them, I'm going to start adding line shading on the leaves, and the leaves I'm going to make much darker. And here's another thing that we can achieve with line shading, and that is contrast. Contrast between what is flower and what is leaf. So you can see here, I started by just adding lines on the leaves that look like part of the leaf. We've got a center line, and then the line shading flows out from center. It's the same sort of shade as the petals, but now I begin to darken. I want the green areas of this peony to look much darker, so that even though it's a black and white drawing, we kind of know what would be green and what would be pink or white. But with that said, I don't want to just darken them indiscriminately. I'm still thinking about my light source. So where would the leaves be darker if I want to make them darker? Well, they would be darker anywhere that they're kind of peeking out from under the flower, because the flower is casting a shadow on them. So I'll darken them there. and they're curving, and I'm thinking that they're curving kind of inward with the center of the leaf being higher. So maybe they're a little darker along their edges where the light isn't hitting as naturally. Remember, you're the artist, you decide. If the leaves are curving the other way, maybe they're darkest at their center. I hope that makes sense. I do have a video on shading and I will link it in the description below, and it's all about different ways you can shade with pen, and it's very very precise. We really go in depth, so definitely check out that video. But there is my level 3 shaded peony all done. She is looking good. She just jumps off the page with all that line shading. And I hope you see that, the progression. If you can do the first one, practice it a few times, then maybe try the second one. And then it's not so far out of reach, that third, more advanced illustration with tons of line shading. You kind of get comfortable along the way. Let's talk about our level 1 illustration. This is a simplified contour drawing, capturing key features, and it's very head-on, very two-dimensional. For our second illustration, we gave the peony a little more depth and dimension. We've angled it. You're looking at it on an angle. It's still a beautiful contour drawing, but it does have a lot more detail. And then as we move into level 3, we're looking on an angle. We've captured all of these key features of the peony flower. And then not only have we done an intricate contour drawing, we've really gone all out with our line shading and added so much contrast, depth, dimension, and texture. Thank you so much for watching today. If you enjoyed this content, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you soon with a new tutorial.